Ready, Jim?
We are ready.
All right, good morning. The special board meeting of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey is now called to order. Today's special board meeting is being held virtually via teleconference with the proceedings live streamed to the Port Authority website. Prior to today's board meeting, the commissioners met in executive to discuss matters related to the purchase, sale, or lease of real property where disclosure will affect the value thereof or the public interest. The sole order of business today, our Chief Procurement Officer, Derek Nutter, and our Port Director, Beth Ann Rooney, will present an item to supplement the container terminal leases at Port Jersey Port Authority Marine Terminal and Howland Hook Marine Terminal. Derek and Beth, it's all you.
Great. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. We're here this morning to talk about supplements to two leases with Global Container Terminal at the Bayonne facility and at the Howland Hook facility. We'll start with a quick overview of the terminals. We'll introduce you to Global Container Terminals and the facilities they're currently operating, along with the ownership structure. We'll then jump into the proposed sale of Global Container Terminal USA to the ocean carrier CMA CGM. We'll give you some background on CMA CGM, and then we'll jump into the key lease provisions and the request for authorization. So the Port of New York and New Jersey, as you know, is operated as a landlord port, meaning the Port Authority is in control of the land, and then we lease it out to private sector operators to run. The Port of New York and New Jersey last year was the #2 port in the country. We operate a total of 3,000 acres of marine terminal space spread across 6 municipalities in New York and New Jersey. And then within those 3,000 acres, we have 6 individual container terminals operated by 5 entities. And then in addition to that, we have a number of rail facilities and other non-container businesses. In terms of Global Container Terminal, the first facility that they operate in Bayonne, New Jersey, is shown here in the graphic, outlined in yellow. That's a 170-acre terminal in Bayonne, not inclusive of the on-dock rail facility, which is just to the north. This is the only facility that's located outside of the Bayonne Bridge, meaning it doesn't have the navigational constraints going underneath the Bayonne Bridge and the Kill-Van-Kull waterway. In 2009, the Port Authority acquired what was Global Terminal. Global Terminal was about 2/3 of this property located on the western side of it. The area to the east was what we used to call the Northeast Auto Terminal. And by acquiring Global Terminal, which at the time was the only container terminal not under the Port Authority's jurisdiction, we were able to combine Global Terminal's 100 acres with our 70 acres to create one contiguous 170-acre Global Container Terminal Bayonne. And with that, combination of those two facilities back in 2010, we entered into a new lease that currently runs through 2047, and there is the possibility of a 20-year extension on that parcel. Shifting over to Staten Island, outlined in yellow, 153-acre terminal, again, not inclusive of a 59-acre rail terminal, which is just to the east of that. This is the largest container terminal in New York. The land is owned by the City of New York and leased to the Port Authority through 2058. In 2007, Global Container Terminal New York leased the Howland Hook Terminal from the Port Authority, and that lease currently runs through 2029. In terms of Global Container Terminal's current ownership structure, it's owned 37.5% by Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, another 37.5% by IFM, which is a global infrastructure fund out of Australia, and the remaining 25% by the British Columbia Pension Fund. Collectively, they own Global Container Terminals, which is made up of Global Container Terminal USA, inclusive of New York and Bayonne facilities. And they also own Global Container Terminal Canada. The transaction where they are looking to sell to CMA CGM only addresses the Global Container Terminal USA assets. So current owners, GCT USA, are looking to transfer those assets to CMA CGM. They announced a deal between themselves on December 6th of 2022. All government approvals, with the exception of the Port Authority, have been obtained at this point. That includes the Department of Treasury's Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, as well as the Federal Trade Commission's Hart-Scott-Rodino review. The existing lease with Global Container Terminals gives the Port Authority broad rights to approve the change of control. In terms of who CMA is, CMA CGM is a French shipping and logistics company that was founded in 1978, with predecessor companies having roots back to the mid-1800s. CMA CGM is the third largest shipping company in the world. They're also the third largest ocean carrier serving the Port of New York and New Jersey. They have a presence today in over 160 countries, with 400 offices and many warehouses and over 155,000 employees around the world. Their fleet of vessels has over 600 vessels, the largest of which have regularly been calling the Port of New York and New Jersey. And in fact, it was their vessel, the T. Roosevelt, which was the first and the largest to go underneath the newly raised Bayonne Bridge in 2017. CMA CGM is the eighth largest container terminal operator. They started the terminal operating business in 2001 and now have assets in 28 different countries, the largest being the Phoenix Marine Terminal in the Port of Los Angeles. That is the only other terminal in the United States. And they have similarly sized facilities to our Bayonne and Staten Island facilities in the likes of India, Taiwan, and Jamaica. CMA CGM is a family-owned business led by the Sade family, headquartered in Marseille, France, and with revenues valued at over $74 billion last year. And now I'll turn it over to Derek.
Thank you, Beth. So as part of the change of control consent that we would provide, we would enter into an agreement to change several of the key lease terms, falling into the categories of the lease expiration, at least in one of the two cases, and then financial terms and non-financial terms. For the lease expiration, there'll be no change in the lease expiration date for Bayonne. As Beth mentioned, it currently expires in 2047, subject to a potential 20-year extension. However, in New York, the Howland Hook facility, we will extend the lease end date from 2029 to 2047. So by adding 18 years. And that will be in order to help facilitate some of the other terms that I'll mention in a moment, including the investment that they plan to make. In terms of the financial terms, rent for both Bayonne and Howland Hook will increase, and it will become on a per container basis, subject to a minimum annual guarantee. There will also be an obligation to invest in the wharf and the berths, which has traditionally been a Port Authority obligation. And over time, that will shift fully to the tenant, become their obligation, their financial obligation. In addition, there'll be a commitment on expanding capacity. I mentioned both in the short term, each facility will receive an investment in the short term to expand capacity. And once those terminals meet their new larger capacity in the future, there will also be a requirement, a commitment to continue to invest in subsequent phases. And then lastly, the concept of a windfall protection tied to excess container storage revenue will also go into effect. The non-financial terms that we focused on relate to sustainability. There will be a commitment to our net zero goals by 2050 to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to zero. There will be a commitment related to minority and women business enterprise contracting, as well as for local businesses around the adjacent terminal. So in the case of New York, starting with the Staten Island area, in the case of Bayonne, starting with the areas adjacent to Bayonne. There'll also be new minimum key performance indicators and performance standards, as well as reporting requirements, so that we work together to improve the operations of the facilities and we're able to monitor the progress that they are making. And lastly, there are a series of other requirements related to safety, security, the trucker or customer experience for the truckers who call to ensure that they have a good experience, and then to work in a limited basis on pilot projects related to innovation matters. Based on those terms, we're here today to seek authorization for the lease supplements, which would relate to the change of control, both for the GCT Bayonne and the GCT New York facilities. And with that, I will ask if there are any questions from the commissioners.
Yeah, so Derek, just change of control provision in this contract obviously allows the port to go in and renegotiate conditions. And just in broad strokes, talk about the process that the port has gone on. We are the number 2 port in the country. We want to set the standard in the market and create a higher standard, whether it's financial or non-financial goals. Just talk about how you went about trying to assemble team and the process that you went through, and we're bringing it to as we bring it to a head for above here.
Well, some of our leases were negotiated a number of years ago, in some cases decades ago. And so as the container terminals have, the whole business has modernized and changed, it's not surprising there are certain terms that we need to update as well. So in this case, we have 2 different leases, each had different types of terms. And we looked at them individually to identify those terms that made sense to bring closer to what I'll call market in the financial sense, and otherwise modernized, like sustainability, like minority contracting, where we have important initiatives and important objectives that we want to achieve through our leases.
And is it fair to say that the lease that was agreed upon in 2010 from the port would not be the forecast the kind of conditions that we're seeing now in 2023? So the conditions that are being put into this contract are more reflective of what the market bears and what's really responsible, both from an economic and a non-economic standpoint.
That's right. I think we've tried to strike a balance here to achieve terms that are more market based on where the current market is, but also be able to withstand downturns to the extent that there are. This business is a cyclical business, so we want our operators to be healthy and to operate to the best extent they can. So we're trying to thread the needle between those different objectives.
And we've had our experts retained and gone through other reports throughout the country, other markets, find out what is reflective of today's market, what's reflective of 2030s, 2040s, 2047, and embed within this new contract conditions that we think are going to be fair to both sides, and obviously allowing us to have this growth, the significant growth, whether it be CapEx, whether it be rent, or whether it be windfall provision.
Right. We think our objectives are aligned with the terminal operators. In other words, more traffic, we both share in the upside. And so that's why our rent is largely based on a container basis. So they're successful, we're successful, we're able to bring more traffic to the region. So all of those objectives have been thought through as part of this.
And commissioners, any questions you have for Derek or the team on this? I know we covered it extensively for the last few executives, and obviously had an executive today. Any questions? All right. As I've been informed by the corporate secretary that there's been no written and video submissions. Is that accurate, Jim?
That is correct.
So there are actually no speakers today. Prior to requesting, we asked, are there any recusals, Jim?
There are no recusals.
All right. Having a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Chairman O'Toole?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Linford?
Yes.
Commissioner Bullwidge?
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher.
You hear me? Yes?
Yes, Commissioner?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. We got you.
Commissioner Helmy.
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly.
Yes.
Commissioner LaBarbera.
Yes.
Commissioner McCabe.
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson.
Yes.
Commissioner Rosado.
Yes.
So all the votes in order, this item has been approved. Let me just say, Rick, thank you very much for probably the most extraordinary negotiation that you've headed to the last period of time. This is something we have not seen in the last 6 years. This is probably, I assume, one of the most complicated negotiations that we have seen, and obviously have had to look at various other markets and talk about significant changes to this particular contract. So I want to thank you, Amy. Thank you very much for legal. Derek, extraordinary work that you have done. Beth Ann, you in the group, and all the folks who have been involved in this extraordinary. And I don't think people will realize until years later just how much of a savings and a win this will be for all parties, and that the Port Authority's downside we will be protected through 2047. So thank you all. There being no further business, I ask that we move to adjourn. Have a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Meeting's adjourned, and we'll see everybody in September for the 9/11 remembrance or the rose ceremony, which will go out. We'll have a memo being sent out by Jim with all the activities that are going to go on in the next couple of weeks. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good day. Thank you.